Node.js works. So yesterday I already given you an overview of what is a server-side scripting. So in a simple point to make you understand, so this is the client side. So this is the client side. And client side, so we are dealing with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and jQuery for designing the front end. And these we have server side now. So this is server side. This is on server. Server side, we are using the technologies Node.js and Express. We are using Node.js and Express. So backend, we are using databases. That means server side also, this all backend only. Database backend is, we are having, this is database. And in the database, we are going with MongoDB and MySQL I showed you. So this, now what is server-side scripting is nothing but, in server-side scripting, what we do is, we create server and we configure server so that it can handle request. It can process request. It can process the request, and it can handle generate response. That means we can create the server, we can configure the server, and we can handle the request from the client, process the request, generate the response. All such activities are managed server side. For that, we need a scripting language. That means from client side, when a request comes, from client side, the request comes. Server side, that request will be handled, processed. Not every time. If necessary, it will communicate with the database. It's not mandatory that every time it should communicate with the database. If necessary, it will communicate with the database. Get the data from the database. And it will send the response to the client. That means the request accessed from the client, and the response from the client. To the client from the server. That's what we have to learn in Node.js. In Node.js server-side scripting, we have to learn how we can handle the communication from client side. Creating the server, configuring the server, interacting with it, all these things we are going to discuss. Now let's see how it works, how it is managed. For that, actually, you need to install Node.js, but we already installed Node.js in the beginning itself. So we don't need to again install any Node.js because already Node.js is there in our computers, we are using it. So already it is there. So we don't need to worry about that. Now, once the Node.js is available on your machine, how to write server-side programs. Actually, Node.js have some important abilities. Actually, Node.js is open source. It is cross-platform. It is JavaScript based. Open source, you can customize, you can create some custom things according to your requirement. Cross-platform, that means It can run on any operating system service. So JavaScript based, that means the language used by Node.js is JavaScript. So Node.js is a server-side technology. Then many times people have a doubt like, so if JavaScript is used for Node.js, what we have to learn in Node.js? In Node.js, what will be there? Actually, in any server-side technology, every server-side technology is about, every server-side technology is about handling some important objects. It is all about handling the objects. We have a request object. We have a response object. We will have an application object. We will have a session object. So like that. So we have like cookie objects like this. Server-side technology, so many will be there. So in that, so many points will come. So learning server-side technology is all about, server-side technology is all about how to handle these objects. Actually, these objects are managed with JavaScript. So what is request? That means anybody who is learning server-side technology means he already have to learn one language. With that language, server-side technology is handled. So we need to handle a server-side technology. That means we need to know about all these objects. Request object means it provides all the properties and methods that are responsible for requesting the data from client. That means server will use a request object. By using that request object, server is going to access information from the client and handle it. By using request object, it can handle the request from the client. By using response object, it can send response back to the client. So that means request object is used by server to fetch information from client. Like generally, it can request form data. It can request the query string. It can request cookies. What are cookies? I will tell you. It can request the cookies. So it can request sessions. So local storages. So we call them as local storage. All these comes under storage. All these comes under request object. So server uses a request object so to handle all these activities. Server uses a response object to send response to the client. That means it can send file response. It can send file as response. It can send JSON as response. It can send HTML as response. That means the response it can send in the form of a file. It can send in the form of JSON. It can send in the form of HTML. It can be various. It can even send cookie as a response. So this is response object. This we are going to see. We are going to work with them. You are going to understand about that. So generally, the request object and response object purpose is this. Similarly, application object maintains the memory for handling the data which is required across the clients. That I will tell you detailedly later. Now it is too early to discuss application sessions. First, if you are aware of this, then you can understand others. Right. So generally, Node.js, not only Node.js, any server-side technology have this. If you are learning Java, JSP, .NET, ASP.NET, PHP, Python, everywhere these concepts will be there. Those concepts are used by using different languages. JSP uses Java, .NET uses, ASP.NET uses C# languages. PHP have PHP, Python have Python. So Python uses Django, Flask-like frameworks actually. It have Python. So the point is, all server-side technologies have same concept, but the language used is different. Then why Node.js? Why Node.js? So why we are learning Node.js in full stack? Because already we know a language, JavaScript, and Node.js is JavaScript based. If Node.js is JavaScript based and already we know JavaScript, then it is good. So that means it is easy for any developer to understand, handle, and work. Not only that, at large scale, applications also are built by using Node.js, handled by using Node.js like technologies. For example, you have YouTube. YouTube uses Node.js in the backend. Amazon Prime, Netflix, they use in the backend Node.js. Such audio, video, buffering related people, they use Node.js in the background. So Node.js is used, but not everywhere. It has its own limitations also. Some restrictions also. But what are the features of Node.js? Actually, Node.js was originally designed by Ryan Dahl, and it was in 2009. Node.js came into existence in 2009. It came with some important features. It uses a JavaScript engine called V8. It uses V8 engine. So engine. Server-side technologies requires a engine. So that engine is responsible for compiling, processing, generating the output, sending the response, handling request response. So managing all the activities is done by this engine. Actually, it is the engine used by Node.js. V8 is the engine used by Node.js. Different technologies server side, they use different engines. Actually, entire Node.js is built with C and C++ language. It is built with C and C++ language, but Node.js language is JavaScript. That means Node.js technology is built with this C and C++. But the language used by Node.js is JavaScript. So that is the reason you don't need to know C, C++, because they are used to build that Node.js technology. Internally, Node.js uses JavaScript to handle various interactions. And one of the main feature of Node.js, that means what is the specialty of Node.js is the features of Node.js. One is it uses modular approach. Modular approach means only the library that is required for that situation is loaded. Entire library is not loaded. So that means generally you might have you have already seen. For example, if we are using Bootstrap and all these things, you have observed, actually, suppose we have a button. So in the button, we need to apply some class called BTN primary, like classes we want to apply and we need to configure. Actually, only these two classes I am using, but just for using these two classes, you have to import entire bootstrap.css file. This bootstrap.css file is having thousands of lines. 10,000 lines code is present, and it occupies approximately, suppose, 4 MB space. And this file you are using, this much big library you are using only to handle these two things. There is no other way. We have to do that. Even to use one class also, you have to import entire library. That means this is problem. This is called legacy type. Legacy type means unnecessary library is in your memory. Even if you are not using it, it is in the memory. This is burden for application. Node.js uses a modular approach. It uses a modular approach. Modular approach advantage is the modular approach. It uses modular approach. And the modular approach advantage is the modular approach means it will load only the library that is required for the situation. It will load only the library that is required for the situation. So that means it will not load entire library. The library that is needed for that particular requirement, it will load it. That makes the application more better. So perform better. That is what actually modular approach is. Modular approach. Another important point is actually Node.js is single-threaded, but it uses single-threaded, but it uses asynchronous approach. Async approach. It uses async. That means it uses non-blocking technique. What is meant by single-threaded and what is multi-threaded actually? Multi-threaded allows to perform multiple tasks simultaneously at the same time. Then means actually, so what is multi-threaded, single-threaded? The point is, for example, suppose see, the concept of multi-threaded and single-threaded concept is, so what is the difference actually is, suppose we have so many clients. So that means it have to handle request from the clients. So suppose so many clients are there. So these are all the clients, and we have a server. And in the server, we have some resources. So some resources are present on the server. Now the client have to access these resources and use those resources from the server. Then generally what we have to do is to access the resources, server will create an object. Server will create an object. Through that object, it will allow to handle all these clients. So that means, so only one thread. This is one task, one thread. This one thread is going to manage everyone. How it is going to manage everyone is by using asynchronous approach. Simultaneously, all can execute. So by using asynchronous approach. But in multi-threading, it doesn't happen like that. In multi-threading, what happens is, for every client, a separate object is created. One object for first client, another object for second client, another object for third client. That means for every client, every object is created. Now, this type is also good for very large scale applications. You need a lot of interactions. Every user have its own individual interactions. For example, suppose we have Amazon, some shopping site is there. So we have some Netflix. Now, millions of people are using this website at a time. But what is the difference is actually millions of people are watching this Netflix. Millions of people are using Amazon. But Amazon have a lot of more concept than Netflix because millions of users are watching videos. They are doing simple like browsing, selecting a category, in that category which video they want. There are no much complex operations. There are no much complex operations. You open Netflix, which category you want, you go select the video. That means even millions of people are using, millions of people, they are browsing video. They are browsing video and they are watching video. So that means these are only the major tasks performed regularly. But in a shopping site, so many tasks are performed. Like you are filtering, we are searching. So we are searching, we are filtering, we are adding to cart. So we are paying payments. So that means millions of people are paying, manipulating the carts like add items, remove items. So many work is done. So much work is done. That means a lot of interactions are to be done simultaneously for all the users. This type of interaction is very good or multi-threaded. Java, .NET, PHP, Python, all these are multi-threaded. They are good for such type of applications because they need to handle a lot of interactions. But for Netflix, like Amazon Prime, like Spotify, so you are listening to songs. So for all these things, you don't need much interactions regularly. Just browsing and playing, that's it. In this case, single thread is enough. Single-threaded is enough. That means Node.js is not good for such large-scale interactions. So Node.js is good for this kind of audio buffering, video buffering, like contents. It's very good. So it handles everything in an asynchronous way. That is why even if it is a single-threaded, so it is good. It is good for certain type of applications. So this is basically required. To understand. So generally, when we are dealing with server-side technologies, first we need to know the architecture of that technology. So then we can easily handle it. So we need to know about these points. What is single-thread, multi-thread? Another is because of this single thread, CPU is not CPU intensive tasks. It's not good. That means Node.js is not good. So not good for handling CPU based tasks because CPU based tasks requires multi-threading. CPU based tasks require multi-threading. CPU based tasks require multi-threading. CPU based task means, so it will not wait. Generally, in CPU based tasks, what happens is, for example, that is problem with multi-threading. What is problem with multi-threading is, suppose, so this is the process. Process is nothing but your CPU. So this is the process. Now we have tasks. Task 1, task 2, task 3. So many tasks are present. Task 4 like this. Now process have to handle these all tasks. If process have to handle all tasks, what it will do is, first it will load those tasks into memory. So in memory. But this memory have a limit. Like at a time, it will allow 3 tasks to load into memory. Okay. Memory have a limit. It load 3 tasks into memory. But process is also having a limit. That means it will allow only 2 tasks at a time. 2 tasks at a time. That means in the memory, 3 tasks are loaded, and out of that, these 2 tasks are sent into the process. 2 tasks are sent into process. Task 3 is waiting. Now, once task 3 is waiting, so then task 4 will come into memory. So task 4, task 5. At a time, 3 will be in the memory. And out of this, 1 task is gone. Then another task 3 will come into this location. And another task is gone. Then the task 4 will come into this option. That means all 4 tasks cannot be performed at a time. This is the problem of multithreading. CPU based is the problem. That is what the issue with the tasks. That is what actually the issue with the tasks. Now, Node.js is not CPU based. In that case, it can perform all the tasks simultaneously at the same time by using an asynchronous approach. That means what happens is, asynchronous approach means what happens is, so we have suppose 4 tasks. Then what it will do is, it will not wait for the task. So actually, it will make a request to the first one. Now, after that, it will not wait until the first one comes. Immediately, it will make a request to second, third, fourth. All 4 requests it makes at a time. Whichever the task is lightweight, that task will go first into memory and it will process and comes out. Another task is lightweight, then it will do and process and comes out. That means all tasks are requested at a time and they are executed automatically one after another. There is no order. Which one is lightweight, that will come first. There is no order of execution, but finally all your tasks are performed. So that is actually asynchronous approach. We will see that practically implementing in one example, we will see that. Then you can understand the basic asynchronous approach, how it works. So Node.js have these abilities. Another very important feature about Node.js is actually Node.js will not use buffering. That's the reason actually your YouTube, I hope you are using YouTube from several years, but you might have observed YouTube almost 5-7 years back when you watch YouTube. Not more 5, just 4-5 years back when you watch YouTube. You know, on YouTube, you can open a video and you can play it and it is playing. You will pause the video. Suppose the video is, so in YouTube, the video is, for example, 10 minutes video and you paused at 2 minutes. 2 minutes you paused. Rest of 8 minutes also, it will buffer into memory, or it will stop at 2 only. What do you say? Rest of 8 minutes will be buffered, or it will stop into, it will pause at only 2. So you might have observed that earlier, so few years back, when initially YouTube came, it used to buffer entire video. Even some websites today, you can see, if you want to watch a movie online, some movies online, you can pause and it will buffer the rest of all the movie. Then you can play. Have you seen that? Right? That means you can pause and it will buffer the video and you can play. And do you know, you can play that video without internet connection now, because it is buffered into memory. Even you lost connection with the internet, you can watch it, but that's not possible now. Have you observed now? So because YouTube have given a point like you can't buffer, but you can simply download it and you can watch offline. Am I right? So now it is not possible. Now if you pause the video, then it will pause at that particular place and stop. It will not buffer the rest of entire video. That's not there. So Node.js follows this technique, the technique. Another important is in Node.js, data is received in the form of packets. Data is received in the form of packets. Data is received in the form of packet. Data is received in the form of packet. When data is received in the form of packet, generally data, when data is received in the form of packet, generally what happens is the videos, means the content that comes to you will not stop. They will be continuously receiving. They will not stop. For example, observe carefully. Suppose early days, sometimes what happens is when you are watching video, suddenly internet connection slow down. Even today also, some websites, when you slow down, then it will start buffering. Some spinner will come on the screen, right? So buffering. But observe carefully some websites these days, YouTube, Netflix, and all these people, Amazon Prime and all these people, they will not stop your video. Just they will change the quality of the video and continue. Have you observed that? Right? That means they will not stop the video. That means the quality of the video will be reduced if your internet connection is slow. So your byte rate is slow. If it is fast, then it will be more. It will be more. That means depending on the situation, it can handle. Depending on the situation, it can handle. So that is basically how it is going to handle the situation and manage the situation. That's what we call as data is received in the form of packets. Data received in the form of packets. So it will not use any buffering. So no more buffering of contents. So it will automatically change the quality of the video and it is defined. Right? These are all important points. These are all some features of Node.js. So Node.js is good for so applications like data streaming applications, audio video streaming applications, non-CPU intensive applications, single page applications, progressive applications, mobile single page applications, I will tell you. So for that, it is good. And it's not good for relational data interactions, CPU based works, multi-threading, large scale e-commerce like applications. It's not good. Depending on the situation and requirement, we have to handle that. So that is very important. Now, how these Node.js server-side programs are written, how the configuration is defined, how we have to use Node.js, we will see. Already Node.js is installed in your computer. And actually, Node.js server-side programs are written in JavaScript file. That means Node.js server-side program will have the extension .js. Node.js server-side programs will have the extension .js. Server-side programs are written in JavaScript file actually. Server-side programs are written in that. And we have to compile by using a Node compiler. Node is the compiler. So actually it uses the V8 compiler. So by using that, we have to compile the programs. And very important is actually, so Node.js uses JavaScript language. That means in Node.js, so you cannot use DOM manipulations. DOM manipulations means get element by ID, tag name, class name, or document.write, alert. Such things will not work in Node.js. Why? Because Node.js is using JavaScript not for DOM manipulations. It is using JavaScript as a language for server-side interactions. JavaScript as a language for server-side interactions. In that case, JavaScript we will use here as a language. Language means we will use for variables, data types, operators, statements, functions, OOP concepts. So, but we will not use for history object, window object, location object, document object. We don't use them. String objects, they will work. Data objects, they will work. So math objects, they will work like that, they will work. But DOM manipulations will not work. So we have to use JavaScript for that. Generally simple, very simple actually. So you see here how to create servers, configure everything, we will learn about them. Suppose we go into our location here. First point is how to create. So a server-side programming, how to create a server-side programming means how to create a server-side application, front end, back end, everything. We will see detailedly. So let's do one thing. We will create. So here we will create a new project. We will create a new project and use that project. So for that, what I will do is I will go here and I will create a folder in my computer and I will give the name as backend. So I'm creating a folder called backend. That is the backend folder I created in the C drive. Okay, open this folder in your project. So in C drive, we have backend. That is the folder opened here. Now, it is not a web application yet. It is not a web application. How to configure as a web application? You know, what is the command we have to run to configure as a web application? In the terminal, you have to run the command. What is the command to configure as a web application? What is the command we have to run to configure as a web application? Tell me. So what is the command? You know already, right? So we have npm init, right? And use -s, so that it will not ask you questions. Directly it will generate package.json file. If I don't use -y, then it will ask question for everything. What should be the version name? What should be the project name? And all such things it will ask. Then you have to just remove that. So you need to just configure. Just use -y. The package.json file is created. It's created. Now it is ready. As a web application, it is ready. Okay, now once it is ready, that means the package.json is created. Now we will create a separate folder and we will give the folder name server. All the server-side programs we will keep here. Now, how to add server-side program? Server-side program is JavaScript program. How to add a JavaScript file, you know. In server folder, I will use app.js. That's it. Then app.js. Any name you can give. So let's give like, because index.js is the startup generally. We write index.js. You can give any name, doesn't matter. Index.js. Here you can use your JavaScript programming. But as I already told you, you cannot use your DOM manipulations and all. So general basic JavaScript program. Suppose you say var, so username. I just defined John. You cannot have like prompt, alerts, and all these here. How to take input from client side? We have to take input. From client side, data will come. That I will tell you. From client side, data will come. We have to collect it and we have to use it. So initially, here we declared a variable. And what is output? Output function, we have to use console only. You cannot use document.write, inner HTML. All these will not work here because there is no HTML here. So we have to just use console.log. And here we need to present that information. Rest of your concept is same. That means here we are saying hello, and whatever the username is there. And in the next line, then we have to use /n. So we say welcome to Node.js. So that is the program we written. That's how we need to define. Because it's not HTML, next line means not BR. We have to use /n. Now this is it looks like a general ordinary program only, but it is now server side you are writing. Now how to compile, run and see this? So in the terminal, you have to go to the location where you saved that file. You see in the terminal, you have to go to that location. In the terminal, or you can open in command prompt. In the terminal, cd server. Okay, that is the folder. Now we have to compile this index.js. We have to write the program like this. Means you have to write the command node index.js. Node index.js. Node index.js, that means it is going to handle that node index.js. So it is going to access that and compile it. If there are any errors, it will report. Otherwise, it is compiled successfully. And it is executing the command and it is showing the result. Hello, John, welcome to Node.js. So that is just a simple JavaScript program running server side, actually, running server side. We are not using any HTML page, but this is just only introduction. Now we have to learn how to write the programs which can handle the request from the client, process that request, generate a response, and get back to the response. That is the approach we need to follow. That means now you have to learn how to create the server. So in Node.js, we have to create the server. That server will accept the request from the client, process that request, and generate a response. So in Node.js, first you have to learn how to create a web server. How to create a web server. Already you know the role of web server. Web server responsibility is to manage the request from the client, process the request, and generate a response. So in Node.js, we have to create a web server. And generally, web server is a web server. To create web server in Node.js, we need a special library, HTTP library. Actually, we need HTTP module. This HTTP module is responsible for handling. It is responsible for handling the interaction from the client, process the request, generate a response, and send the response back to the client. By using this module, you can handle the request from the client, process the request, and generate. So we need a HTTP module. So to install, we have to install this module now, because Node.js initially comes with only basic library. That Node.js basic library is not enough for handling all the interactions. We need to install more libraries. So how to create a server? That means how do we create a web server? Web server in Node.js. Actually, you have observed in our front-end part, when we are building HTML, CSS, JavaScript, we developed a project. There also we were using a server. And that server was not created by us. That server was automatically running. So with the live server, we installed live server. Am I right? We installed live server. So, and that live server is internally hosting your application. It is internally compiling your application. It is internally processing your application. That live server is doing that work actually. Live server is doing that work. It is managing your interactions. It is handling your interactions and doing that. But now we are going to create our own server, configuring that server. And for that, we need a module called HTTP. We have to install this HTTP module related library. So what we have to do, so we have to just run the command. So in our project, we have to run the command, means the main folder. You know, all are, wherever you say CD server anywhere, you know that a node modules folder is created. That means npm install HTTP. npm install HTTP. npm install HTTP. Automatically npm install HTTP. So it will install the HTTP module. and use -s for saving the module permanently. That means later if I do any modifications, the modules will reset if you don't save. They will reset. Some changes, whatever you made, they will clean up and again reset as normal. That should not happen. So use save. npm install http and save. And this http module is installed. And automatically node modules is added into that http module is ready. There is a folder http module is ready. Currently we have only one. Now how to create a server and how do we configure the server? Once the http module is ready, now next step what we have to do is import that module into the program. How to import modules into the program? To import modules into program, you need a require method. You need a require method. By using the require method, you can import the module into the program. Require which module? You have to tell the module name. Require which module? HTTP, that you have to tell. That means this module is loaded into memory. But how to access the module from memory? That means it should have a reference name. Then we will use var http is equal to this. That means now this module is loaded into memory. Remember, every module contains collection of properties, methods, classes. That means module comprises of classes, functions, which you can access and use in your application. Generally, module comprises of a set of classes. Module comprises of set of functions, and it can handle. So generally module comprises of those things. And we can access them by importing it. So the module is imported. So HTTP module is imported. Now, once the module is imported, you can access the members of that module with this reference. Where reference name, you can give any reference name. That doesn't matter. So now here, so how we configure the application? So here we need to create a server. So how do we create a server? For that, we have to run the command. We need to configure http dot, we have create server method. This is used to create a server. And create server will use a callback function. This function handles two objects. Generally, every server will handle by default two objects, request object, response object. That means this server function is going to handle two objects, request and response. You can give any name, but the first object is considered as request object. Second object is considered as response object. So we will use reasonable names. You can give any name. But first is request object, second is response object. Now, when user makes a request to this, remember, server is loaded into memory. Then how to access this server? To access the server, we need a reference again for that. Server is loaded into memory, that's okay. To access this server, we need a reference where app is equal to. That means now this server is accessed by using this app reference. By using the app reference, we can access it. Now here we need this server to send a response to the client. So which object will send response? This response object will send. That means we have to use response. We have to use response dot. So write, actually so many details will be there. So many details will be there. Initially, suppose I am writing response dot write. That means it sends a response. What response you want to send? You have to write the chunk. Chunk means any code. So anything, whatever you want to send as a response. Suppose I want to send some HTML as a response. So welcome to Node.js. So heading as a response. This is HTML. Remember, the response can be HTML. The response can be file. The response can be JSON. The response can be any type. So I already told you response object will send the response, which can be any type. that you have to tell what kind of response and when the response is sent. What kind of response and when the response is sent. So this is very important. What are all the response methods I am going to explain you? Initially, response.write, that means it is sending this message. So initially I am writing that, okay, fine. Now this server, after that sending that response should stop. Then we have to use response.end. That means response stops. Response stops. It will send this message and it will stop the message. Stop the response. After response stop, configured. Now server is created, but server not started. Server is created, but server not started. Server generally starts by using a method. This is server. App is the server. So this server will start by using the method called listen. Listen is the method. It starts listening. It starts listening. So actually, I can give reasonably the name for this as server. That will be better. So that server.listen. That means now server is listening. Server is listening. Listening on which port number? You can define the port number. Generally, you saw your local server was running in 5500. That is the server actually in our previous front-end projects everywhere. Now here you can use any port number. Suppose I am giving port number 4040. Anything you can give. It doesn't matter, any port number, but make sure that the port numbers are already not in use by some other applications. Suppose some other applications are running on same port number, then you have a conflict. So that's the reason you have to use different. Automatically when you run, it will show you that this is already running on that port number. You please use a different port number. Initially, this is listening on port number. After that, we will put a message, console.log, saying that server started, and it is listening on, actually our server address will be localhost:4040. This is the server. This is where it is listening. This is where it is listening. Actually, instead of localhost, you can use your IP address. Already you know. IP address means 127.0.0.1 like this. That is equivalent to localhost only. That is configured with the localhost. So that is equivalent to localhost. So now this is ready. This is ready. That means this is configured and this is defined and this is ready. So now very important here is generally you can configure this at different port numbers, different responses. But when you are sending a response, you have to tell what kind of response you are sending. I will show you here. Let's start this program now. That means you have to run index node space index.js. That means we have to write this command. That means open the terminal and compile this program now. Every time after writing and changing the program, you have to compile node index.js. Now hit enter, hit enter. That means it says server started. It shows the message server started and it is displaying here. Okay, now open the browser and request that and see. So open the browser and request that and see. That means here we are requesting. So here we are requesting this http://127.0.0.1:4040 and hit enter. You see here, it is showing this just message. It is showing that just message. It is not converting into HTML. It is not converting into HTML. It is just showing this message. It is sending just the message. It is sending this message. It is not converting it to HTML because server have to tell what kind of data it is sending. Then browser can understand. So browser cannot directly understand what kind of data you are sending. Then it will display everything as plain text only. So then you have to tell the server what kind of data you are, tell the client what kind of data you are sending as response. That we have to do by using response header. Response header. Actually, response uses a header. Response uses a header. By using the response header, we have to tell what kind of data we are sending. So that response headers, they can be defined like this. We have to use write head. Okay. So in this response header, which is write head, we have to tell the status code. We need to configure the status code. Status code means if request is successful, the status code is 200. If they requested something which is not available, then we call 404. Those all status codes list I will give you now. We are going to learn the status codes, the numbers, what their purpose is. If request is okay, that means 200. On 200 means on okay, what kind of data you are sending? You have to write like an object. That means we have to write a property, content type. Content type, it is actually MIME type. What type of content you are sending? Text/HTML. You have to tell the MIME type. This is how we need to configure. So still some points are there. So that means it is handling the response header. Write head will tell the browser what kind of data is coming. Then browser can understand. You've done some modifications. After doing the modifications, so once you see server is still running, then those modifications are not updated. You have to terminate, Control-C. Press Control-C, it is terminated. After that, again compile node index.js and hit enter. Again compiled. Okay, now you refresh your page and see here. And now it is working fine. That means it is showing in a heading style because now browser knows that it is a HTML content. That means how it sends response to the client. We have to write the header and send that. That indicates what kind of response is coming. Then it is easy to understand. It can easily understand the data response and working with the response. This is basically the server, how it is managed. Now here we have to learn so many things. What is response? What are response methods? How to write the response headers? How to send various kind of data? How to send file? How to send JSON? How to send HTML? How to send XML? Like different types of responses, how we can send, how we can access the request and all that we will see in the next session. Okay. Tomorrow we will discuss about that. In tomorrow's session, we will learn all the response methods, how to create the responses for various types of requests and send those responses. First,